विश्वं दर्पणदृश्यमाननगरी तुल्यन्निजान्तर्गतम् पश्यन्नात्मनि मायया बहिर्वोद्भूतं यथा निद्रया यः साक्षात् कुरुते प्रबोधसमये स्वात्मानमेवाद्वयम् तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदम् श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये बीजस्यान्तरिवाङ्कुरो जगदिदं प्राङ्निर्विकल्पं पुनः मायाकल्पितदेशकालकलना वैचित्रचित्रीकृतम् मायावीव विजृम्भयत्यपि महायोगी वयस्वेच्छया तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। ॐ भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येमाक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैः स्तुष्टुवागुंसस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः। स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो हरिष्ठनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति। So welcome all of you in this camp, in Easter camp, weekend camp, very short camp. I have just 2 classes, and we are going to see one mantra of a Mundaka Upanishad, which is off-quoted, which is very, very important mantra, and that's how I have selected, which is really, if we understand that, we become qualified for this self-knowledge. And so it's a very important mantra. We'll try to see the whole mantra in these 2 classes. Now, this mantra, well, I said it belongs to Mundaka Upanishad, and Mundaka Upanishad belonds to Atharva Veda. Mundaka Upanishad, Mandukya Upanishad, both. And this, as such, Mundaka and this Upanishad basically has a 65 mantras spread over 3 chapters, and each chapter has got 2 sections called Kanda. Every section is called Kanda, and each chapter is called Mundaka. So chapter means a Prakranam, but here in Mundaka Upanishad, each chapter is called Mundaka. So 3 chapters, and each chapter has 2 sections called Kanda. So total 6 Kandas and 3 Mundakas, and in that all the 65 mantras are spread over. So this is the essence. And now the name Mundaka Upanishad. Mundaka and Upanishad. Now this Upanishad basically is, we know it's a means of knowledge. And when everyone is born ignorant, of course, one is born ignorant and ignorant of the objects and ignorant of the subject, both. And well, we keep on shading off the ignorance of objects as such. But we never try to, shade off this ignorance pertaining to the self. And Upanishad does this job. It's a means of knowledge for gaining self-knowledge. Anyway, and for self, basically, it is all the means of knowledge at our disposal to the human being, at our disposal to the human being, basically. Like senses and inference and all other means of knowledge are not good enough. They are good enough for throwing light upon everything other than the self. But they cannot give any information or knowledge pertaining to the self. So they cannot objectify the Atma. Basically, they are all meant to objectify the world. And so, this Atma, which is called Brahman, is revealed by this Upanishad. So what Upanishad is derived from the root sad. Most of them, I think you know also, but still. So whose meaning is given by Panini as to disintegrate. The root sad means to disintegrate, to destroy, to reach, etc. And this root sad has two prefixes, upa and ni. Both of them together means this Brahma Vidya or self-knowledge. Because upa means near. What is near to me? The nearest to me. In fact, any near is always a, it is a relative term. So, well, you are not near to me. Compared to you, well, my computer is very near to me. Compared to this computer, well, my clothes are near to me, like that. So ultimately, what is nearest to me is the self, the very I, aham, and that is a most proximate. That's the meaning of upa. And ni means nishchaya. So, well, basically, what is nearest? Regarding that, one has to ascertain what it is. What is the self? There is no need of ascertaining what is the self. I know, but that is really speaking, it is not an issue, because I have varieties of the notions regarding me, which are opposite in nature also. So I am a son also, that is also a reality for me, and I am father also is also a reality. That cannot be. If one object cannot be a son and one object cannot be a father. So I mean, you are not understanding. It's all a standpoint. From his father's standpoint, his son, and from his son's standpoint, he is a father. What a big deal. But I am asking you, what is from your standpoint, who are you? Forget about the outer world. So from your standpoint, who are you? Well, that's a criteria, and therefore I am physical body, etc. is a notion. Basically, you know it also. So one has to ascertain what is the reality of oneself, and in fact that is the sought in life. One is really seeking oneself. The seeker is the sought, right? And therefore one is seeking limitlessness. We are going to see that one is seeking freedom in life. One is seeking happiness in life. One is seeking peace in life. One is seeking a security in life. That's all me. That's all me. That's all me. There is no object in the world called happiness. There is no object called, fulfillment. There is no object, well, which you can call it as a peace. There is no object which you can call it as a security. Because this is all centered on self. We'll see that while seeing the mantra. And therefore, this is upa and ni basically implies the Atma here. And Nishya means, well, definitely this Brahma Vidya only. Nishya means definitely ascertainment, and that is in terms of knowledge. And what does this Brahma Vidya do is told by this Sat. In fact, it is a root, but now Upanishad is a word, right? And therefore the Sat root has been converted to a noun, basically. And so Upa plus Ni plus Sad, with the two prefixes Upa and Ni, and the Sad is a root. Well, you add some suffix in that, and then root turns to basically a noun. So they add zero suffix. Sad plus zero is equal to Sad only, ultimately. And therefore it turns to quipafixes they add. Anyway, but that is in the sense of agent. Means Upa plus Ni, that is called Brahma Vidya or the self-knowledge, does something. That is indicated by the root Sad. And what it does, I have given you the three meanings of the Sad. And that is to destroy and to disintegrate and to reach, basically, to a particular thing. And therefore, well, ultimately, so what it does is the various limitations that the life of becoming, etc., called samsara. Well, these are all anarthas. Well, definitely the knowledge disintegrates them, this knowledge, self-knowledge. And will they stage a comeback? No. This Brahma Vidya destroys the cause of the samsara, that is ignorance, and therefore they don't return. And therefore, once a person knows oneself, a life of becoming is over. This life of becoming is a trip. No one is happy where they are and what they are, and no one is happy. Everyone has always projects a happiness and peace and security in the future. And whatever the situation right now I'm in, basically, I'm not happy. And so, well, always there is a life of becoming is involved. And in one life it is not over, so then we require a next life. Bhagavan also gives a new body. And then again, we continue with the same, life of becoming. And this is how it goes on. That's how it is called samsara. Samyak sarati yasmin. It is samsara. Samyak sarati yasmin, in which the person very well smoothly goes from birth to death, and again from death to birth, and then again from that birth to death, again from death to birth. This continuously keeps moving and moving without any kind of a hindrance. He keeps on moving from beginningless time. That's how it's called samsara, because there is a life of becoming. And so unless and until one knows oneself that well, basically what I want in my life, what I'm seeking in my life is nothing but myself, till then this will continue. One is seeking helplessly. One does not want to be seeker, but one is helplessly a seeker. So unless a sort is gained, he is going to be a seeker. That's called life of becoming. Anyway, we'll see that. And therefore, so this Brahma-jnanam, Brahma-vidya destroys the ignorance. That's opposite to that. And so the samsara, which is born of ignorance, also will be destroyed. Anyway, and so then there is no chance of coming back. So disintegrates the samsara, destroys the samsara. And definitely, well, what is a positive gain? These are two are negative things. Okay, positively, this knowledge makes one recognize that one is Brahman. What one is seeking in life is myself, and that he gains it. And therefore, this is called, this is the meaning of the Upanishad. So Upanishad refers to Brahma Vidya, and also points out the result of Vidya also has been told by the word Upanishad. Upanishad means Brahma Vidya, and also word Upanishad, denotes, shows basically the result of this Vidya. And this is how, this is what it is and what it does. Both have been shown by the word Upanishad. And Mundaka, well, Mundaka means basically a head. So there are reasons why this Upanishad is called Mundaka, because one reason is that there is a ritual in Atharvaveda called Shirovrata, in which the student ceremonially, basically, in which the student ceremonially carries a fire pot on his head, and when he's approaching the teacher. And so the idea conveyed is basically one should approach this Upanishad with a burning desire to gain the knowledge. Nobody is interested in knowledge. Everyone is interested in freedom. Everyone is interested in fulfillment. Everybody is interested in success. Everybody is interested in peace. Everybody is interested in security. That's called moksha. Moksha means freedom. And freedom denotes everything. Freedom from insecurity, freedom from anxiety, freedom from uneasiness centered on the self. That is what the freedom is. Moksha means freedom, but freedom from what I don't want. That's what the Brahma Vidya does. And therefore, well, basically, one should approach the Upanishad or Brahma Vidya basically with a burning desire to gain the knowledge. Well, so just as a fire whose hair has caught fire, whose hair has caught this fire, rushes to put out the fire and does everything with a sense of urgency. Well, same way, this person who is really desirous of a moksha, and he knows the equation. Gaining moksha is gaining knowledge, self-knowledge. That equation is very clear to him. How it becomes clear, we will be seeing in this mantra itself. And well, such a person approaches the Upanishad, but definitely with the help of teacher, he gains the self-knowledge, etc. And therefore, this Mundaka word also is a very, very significant word, indicating the Shirovrata, which is basically ritual in Atharvaveda, and this belongs to Atharvaveda only. And student ceremonially carries the fire. Same way, in one's head there is a fire of gaining this burning desire of gaining self-knowledge. So this is how this Mundaka Upanishad is. And this Upanishad basically, says about two vidyas. So two types of knowledge is one should gain. And they gave the name also in the first section itself, Aparavidya, Paravidya. Aparavidya means a knowledge pertaining to objects. Paravidya, knowledge pertaining to self, subject. This is how these two knowledges everyone should gain. Fortunately, unfortunately, we are gaining this knowledge of objects as we grow in our life. But we never attempt to basically gain this knowledge of self. And therefore, basically, only the person who develops a dispassion for this samsara, basically a life of becoming, there is eligibility for this paravidya, self-knowledge. From aparavidya, you go to paravidya through the gate of dispassion only. So you turn your back to samsara. Samsara means basically the pursuit of, the all extrovert pursuits called pursuit of happiness, pursuit of security, etc. Well, so these are all materialistic pursuits, basically arthakama pursuits. Well, one turns one's back towards that. That's called samsara, but not out of disenchantment. And so a disenchanted person basically can neither enjoy the world nor hope for the other world. So he or she is not eligible basically for the pursuit of paravidya. So one discovers dispassion basically, or a vairagyam by a proper inquiry. And therefore this Upanishad, well, with a great compassion, talks about how one should reach the gate of dispassion. That's the only qualification. Even though we say fourfold, qualification, sadhana, chatushta, sampatti, etc., we say that. But this is a basic thing, a dispassion, basically. Dispassion towards all the pursuits in life. Out of all the four pursuits, dharma, artha, and kama, basically one becomes, one gains, one turns away, one's back, in fact, to this pursuit, basically. And that is with a certain kind of a discrimination, which this Upanishad in this mantra itself is providing. So this is an excellent verse that shows how to discover the limited nature of our all pursuits, material pursuits, and thereby discover in oneself a desire for the final pursuit or purushartha called moksha through paravidya. So this is just a background of that. Now we'll read the mantra and then we'll see the meaning of it. Parikshalokan karmachitan brahmanaha nirvedam ayad nastya kritah kritena tadvijnanartham sa gurumeva vigachet samitpani shrotriyam brahmanishtham. So Parikshalokan karmachitan, having analyzed the slokas, well, gained by the actions, karmachitan. So karma arjitan, earned by actions, gained by actions. So then one develops a dispassion towards all these experiences. Lokaha means basically not just words, it is lokyate iti lokaha. So experiences, varieties of the experiences. So one does not require basically going through all experiences. Here, one need not go to even heaven also. Shruti says pariksha, examining, purely by buddhi. It's not going through the experience. Some people say pariksha lokan means, well, going through all the experiences. Need not be. And well, and going through all the experiences and after examining, afterwards examining, well, what happened? Nothing happened. So same thing happened, in fact, before it is happening again. Nothing new is happening. Every experience is the same ultimately. So anyway, so let us understand this examination of experiences, analysis of experiences. So once, what is this karma chitan? What is earned by the actions? So one's physical body also is brought about by one's previous karma. As long as the prarabdha karma is there, well, it will be there. Afterwards, it perishes, right? And so this physical body also will go one day. So while it is there, it is anityam, it is impermanent. And because it is a product of karma, and also otherwise also it will go one day. And therefore the body which is earned by the karma, that's the first thing. Body which is earned by this previous life's karma basically is impermanent. That's the first thing. Further, okay, that's a different thing. In one's life also, one gains varieties of experiences. We have to examine that also. So one works for 5 days basically and gets a weekend. Maybe Easter weekend or any weekend. 2 days holidays. Maybe a long weekend, maybe 3 days holidays. So this weekend also is earned by the work of 5 days, karma chitan. So karma chitan means you earn. So basically you work for 5 days, then you gain this, weekend. So, well, that also goes away. What you enjoy in 2 days, well, weekend, it just goes away. And well, you should be ready for then Monday, right? For doing work again. If one works for a year, basically, then one gets a holiday for 4 weeks or whatever. I mean, so that is also karmachita. One works for the whole year, then he gets these holidays. And these holidays also last for some time, and then they are over. So we are trying to analyze every experience, basically, well, which is earned by different activity, different actions. So if one works for the whole life, then one gets retirement. And in America, well then, retirement means buying a big car and, a boat, and one, I mean, with it, and one keeps driving all over the country to places, that one had never seen before. So whenever one goes, one would always see some water, trees, mountains, etc., and so on. One sees in different combinations, but these things are there. So, and even this retirement also will not last for a long time. And so any end achieved by, now this is after examination about our experiences in life, any end, well, which is a desirable end, achieved by, actions on a part of doer, well, comes to an undesirable end. Any end which is desirable, I have earned it through my actions, well, ultimately it results into, or it comes to an undesirable end. It goes away, undesirable end. And what kind of karma? All kinds of karmas. It may be mental karma, it may be physical karma or oral karma. Ultimately, definitely karma produces a result, and that result must be desirable. That's how I, with a result, with an intended result only, I do an activity. Well, but even a desirable end also comes to an undesirable end because it will be lost, since it is born of karma. So karma chitan lokan kshiyate. So basically, the physical body or any other field of experience that one gets as a result of karma will be lost in time. So if one has a lot of money, one has so much of power, or one has even physical strength, one has a mental strength, anything, I mean, what you have and which you have earned through actions, basically, well, it will go in time. That's how all empires have gone. Alexander has gone, and the great, he is gone, and our Greek culture, well, has our British Empire, the sun never sets and all that we used to say, everything gone. People have earned so much of money and so through a lot of actions, gone. So these are all karma chitta, all experiences in our life, starting from the gaining physical body till the end of the prarabdha, and in between all experiences which we are earning in terms of, I mean, experiences of happiness and pleasure, etc., or I mean, desirable ends, let's say, all come to an end. This is pariksha. So what a big deal. Your Swami is saying like, oh, I will come to the point. So anything that is accomplished as a result of karma is found expended in time. This is examination, this is a pariksha. And well, Upanishad slowly says also, so just as what is gained here through action like money, power, etc., holiday and whatnot, so is gone. Same way, other kind of a loka, well, which you gain as a karma doing here, good karmas, punya karmas, doing some yajna karma, etc., rituals, etc., you gain swarga, etc., heaven, etc., that also will go, because it comes under the same law of karma and karma phala. So the law does not differ. Karma is finite, karma phala is finite. It will end, whether it is desirable to, and therefore it should not end. Whatever efforts I do, but it will end. And that's how that end, which was really desirable, becomes undesirable. So the law does not differ, basically. Karma phala law is it does not differ. The law is the same, whether you gain this world or anything in this world, or you gain something in the different world. Well, so in this great fabric of law, well, ultimately any karma will give a result, and result, whether it is a desirable or undesirable. And sometimes you get an undesirable result also, but that also will end. Both. And therefore, if there is even a naraka also, the world of pain, that will also be anitya. Or swarga also, well, the world of pleasure, that also will come to an end. So in human life, basically, I mean, this life, in human life, nothing is permanent, basically. Pain as well as pleasure is not permanent. And this is, is a situation. In pariksha lokan karmachita. Then next part, brahmanaha nirvedam ayat. So now, after doing this examination, starting from gaining the physical body till the physical body ends, in between all the experiences, varieties of the experiences, in terms of gaining varieties of the desirable ends and enjoying them, and which you have earned through your actions. Well, after examining everything, some person basically called Brahmana, one who is basically a Viveki, one who is able to gain the Viveka through analysis, this kind of analysis, well, gain something. What does he gain? So, our experiences basically are the result of various right and wrong karmas, are in keeping with the law of karma. The law of karma is same for this world or for the other world also. So that is why actions done here produce a result, of course, to be experienced in other worlds also. But a finite karma can definitely produce a finite result. This is what he's thinking. A finite karma, this Brahmana means a Viveki person, who is a Sattvika, basically. Brahmana means a Sattvika. No, here, in Bhagavad Gita, we never talk about by birth. It's not, because the Upanishad is addressing to the entire humanity. And well, this Brahmana, Kshatriya, etc., who in America, who will bother about that? So basically, disposition. That is how Bhagavan has even, divided. If this is it is not a caste system, basically. So based on Varna and Guna and Karma only. Chaturvarnyam maya srishtam guna karma vibhagashaha. Bhagavan said in 4th chapter. Chaturvarnyam. I am classifying the human beings based on Guna and Karma. Guna means either a person who is predominantly has a sattva in the mind, basically. Then definitely is called Brahmana. So that person, he's able to discern, basically. He's not overwhelmed by the material pursuits. He's not overwhelmed. He's able to examine pros and cons, both. That this money can give this much, power can give this much, relationship can give this much. And what really I desire in my life is something different. That's we are going to see that. And well, so they are not able to give that thing also is very clear to him. He's a very objective person. I would say Brahmana means an objective person. What is the object, or what is the value of object, he is able to discern. He does not impose a subjective value on a given thing. Most of the people impose a subjective value, which a object does not carry. Like I look upon, suppose, as a Swami, even if I look upon this money as a source of security, well, it is a subjective thing. In fact, money does not give security. It is very simple to understand also. If money can give me the security, I should not worry about the security of money, because that's a source of security, right? What is a source of security? Definitely you should not worry about the security of that thing. But money comes more, you become more insecure. In fact, you are worrying about security of the money itself. So then that's a value which I superimposed upon the money. Money has a buying power. You can buy the thing. That's how very beautifully when somebody said to me, Swamiji, money can buy so-called objects of security, but money cannot buy security. That's true. You can have a security personnel around you. It doesn't mean you feel secure. No way. Money can buy so many objects of happiness, so-called. Money cannot buy happiness. Money can buy the best, very luxurious bed. Money cannot buy the sleep. Money can buy basically money can buy the people also. Money cannot buy the love of the people. In fact, what is most valuable in your life, money is not able to buy. Love is most valuable. Pleasure, happiness is most valuable. And security is most valuable. Peace is most valuable. Money can buy a house, but money cannot buy a home. You know very well. House and home. Puja Swami is to define, right? Money can buy a house, but there is a harmony in the home, in the house, between the members and all that, and there is joy. Money cannot buy. So people buy a house in order to gain some peace and joy in the life. And for joy and peace, they go out later because they don't gain in the home. So what is most valuable in your life, money cannot buy. Now, if I think like this, I have become a objective person. I have started superimposing. I have stopped, I'm sorry. I have stopped superimposing the value which I superimpose upon that money. I have stopped it now. Now money has an objective value. Money has a buying power. It can buy many things. Money can run, I have to run my life basically. Definitely I need money. Nothing is free in the life. Swami used to say, nothing is free. No single lunch is free, right? Anyway, what I'm saying is ultimately, so one has, Brahmana means basically an objective person. An objective person who has done this kind of a viveka, that all karmas are finite. Any kind of result is going to be finite. And this is the analysis pariksha. And this is what we call nitya anitya vastu viveka. What I am running after from morning to evening is ultimately in search of what? No, I'm in search of basically certain objects of security and joy, etc. What do you want through those objects? Now, I want security and happiness forever, basically. But the objects themselves, which you have earned as a result of your actions, they themselves are anitya. They are impermanent. How will they give it? And we are going to some other analysis also, but I'm saying, so he analyzed now. What I want in my life is something permanent. No one wants a happiness for today. No one wants a security just for today. No one wants a peace and love for today. Everyone wants to gain happiness, now and later also. Well, here and anywhere also. I want to be happy in this situation and later situations also. And therefore, I'm in search of something permanent, nityam. And well, I'm doing a lot of activity, which is, and by that I am gaining certain results, which I consider as a desirable result, but they are anityam, they are impermanent. And that's how my search is never over. So this is nitya anitya vastu viveka. That is what the first viveka is, sadhan chatushtaya sampatti. Somebody asked me, Swamiji, from where this sadhan chatushtaya sampatti has, in which Upanishad it is there? These are the statements. Pariksha lokam, pariksha, examining. Once you examine that, analyze the varieties of the experience which you gain through your own actions, well, you find that what you are really searching for is one thing, and what they are able to promise and they give is another thing. What they give is something impermanent, anityam. What your really heart is seeking something permanent, nityam. So nitya anitya vastu viveka. In fact, they call purushartha viveka also. I will tell you later. So this discriminative understanding of what is real, what is unreal, what is permanent, what is impermanent. This viveka is always mentioned as one of the qualification for the study of Vedanta, and is based on this mantra also. And then, well, this examination is done with the help of all the means of knowledge. This pariksha has to be done with 3 means of knowledge. Generally, this is in a Shastra, we employ 3 means of knowledge, ultimately to arrive at this, this viveka. First is pratyaksha, which is very powerful, right? And so every result from every action basically is lost in time, is well known even through perception. Well known through perception. I see in my own life, I have gained several things. They all have gone. I have gained through my own actions, through my activity. Well, I have gained several things, but it has gone. And therefore, even I'm earning money, let's say, even I'm earning money, monthly salary I'm getting as a result of that, that my job or whatever work. It is getting spent, right? Daily it is going. So whatever you earn through action, karmachita, lokal means experiences, objects, they go. They won't, nothing is permanent here. Anyway, so the examination is done with the help of this means of knowledge at one's disposal, human beings' disposal. And the first is this pratyaksha. Pratyaksha proves easily. Perception itself proves easily that whatever, every result of an action is lost in time, is well known through this pratyaksha. Now, second means of knowledge, we call proof also. You can call proof, which we employ is inference. Inference. And what is that? Well, any result of an action is impermanent, being result of an action. And like what? Like physical body. physical body, well, is a result of an action, of previous action, previous life's action, right? We call prarabdha. Now it ends. It ends. And therefore, if physical body, which is a result of an action, is going to end or it ends, then definitely any result of an action, born of an action, will end. That's the inference. That's the inference. So they give this yadyat karma phalam tattad anityam. What else karma phala is anityam, is impermanent. Karma phalatvat, because it is a karma phala, because it is a result of an action. And the example, body. Body is a result of action, previous actions, previous lives action. It ends. 50 years, 60 years, 70 years, 80 years, whatever. And we see around us also. Anyway, so this is a second proof. First is a pratyaksha, perception. Second is inference. And third, Shastra itself. Shastra tells. And don't project too far. No. Whatever you hear, it is all ephemeral, and this is impermanent. But I'm going to do a big ritual, Vedic ritual, and I'm going to get immortality, or I'm going to get some result which will be permanent, etc. Shastra says, well, never have that kind of a notion in your mind. So Shastra means what? Upanishad says this. So we always quote three things: Pratyaksha, Anumana, and Shruti. These are our arguments for proving something. Based on these three proofs. First is, proof means a means of knowledge. First is Pratyaksha, very powerful. Second is inference. Third is Shastra itself. And well, Chandogya Upanishad says very beautifully, well, yatha iha karma jito lokaha kshiyate, tatha amutra punya jito lokaha api kshiyate. Yatha iha, tatha amutra. Just as here, the rule which you employ in case of karma phala, same rule is applied there. It's a one law. So just as whatever is born of this karma is finite, so the result basically is which is born of karma is finite here. And so same way, whatever you do here on any action and you gain something later after this life also is also going to be the same. So whatever experience is gained in other worlds also through punya also comes to an end. And Bhagavan said very beautifully in the 8th chapter itself, Abrahma bhuvanan lokaha punaravartinaha. So wherever you go, the highest achievement in a human life is a Brahma Loka. Highest achievement. Tremendous it is. It is just means you become a Brahma means what? So you become a Brahma. But that's the highest achievement one can gain. Not compared to here, whatever you become a president or all, this is nothing. This is Brahma means it's something very, very unusual. But that also, where even if you go to Brahma Loka, you will return. You will return. And simple rule is, whatever get associated with, ultimately it is going to result in dissociation. So that is how it is. Anyway, then objection. These Swamis, whenever they come, they talk like this. Whatever a little joy we are getting here and there, that also they take away. Really, that's how, why are you going into his class, etc.? I have told you several times, don't go there. They themselves are basically, they have a disenchantment for the world because of something happened in their life. And they try to create in us also. So, well, this person is raising a doubt. Let the result be impermanent. I'm happy with it. What's your problem, Swami? So I'm not interested in your eternal result. And I know you don't utter a word moksha, but you are going to utter the same thing. I know. You will bring this moksha. Yeah, you will ring the bell and will say, well, there is moksha, there is moksha. So you want everyone to be a candidate for moksha. We don't want. We will not come under your sway. When one is doing karma, one is not interested in an eternal result. I know. I do certain things and it will give me some desirable result. And I enjoy it, experience it. And then, okay, further I will do some action. Then again, I will gain some result desirable. And then I will enjoy. This is a life. What is the big deal in this? This permanent result and these and that. So one may not want it all. We don't want this moksha. Who knows this? What is moksha? What is this moksha? So one does not know what it is actually. And therefore, well, and again, there is nothing else available anyway. What is available is whatever is there, all objects of pleasure, security, peace, etc. Well, they are available here right now. This is all that is available. Therefore, ultimately, there is no choice. Let's do activity, gain some experiences, enjoy it. That's all. So what do you think? We have to say, do some analysis. You do some activity, you gain a desirable object, you become happy, and that happiness does not last. Okay, and it has gone. But our analysis, deeper analysis, well, reveals something else. That what your response is there is not true. In as much as there is a self-judgment in which one finds oneself dissatisfied all the time. I'm not comfortable with this situation. Nobody thinks that I do not want to be happy. In fact, I want to be happy, not by gaining just desirable result. Afterwards also, let the desired end goes away. As you said, it is impermanent, it will go away. And well, again, you become unhappy. But I don't want to be unhappy even for a moment. I want to be happy here and anywhere. I want to be happy now and later. I want to be happy in this situation and in any other situation. And therefore, well, this is your basic desire. We have not cultivated such a desire of happiness, of permanent happiness in you. You are born with that. And therefore, we are saying you, even if you get a desired result and doing some action, and well, definitely it will make you happy also, but it will not make you a permanent, it will not give you permanent happiness. That's what we are telling you to basically analyze out of your experiences. And your heart is seeking something permanent. And that is that you cannot erase. This desire, cultivated desire, can be erased. A natural desire cannot be erased. Natural desire cannot be erased. A desire for a thirst, desire for a hunger, desire of to be a happy person forever. At any moment, at any time, at any place, under any circumstances that you are born with. And well, therefore, you just can't tell us like this that, well, I will gain some desirable end, I become happy, and then again I will let me be unhappy. No problem. Again, I will do some action, and then again I will gain some desirable end. Again, I will become happy. In between, I'm not happy, so no problem. That's not. Your heart is constantly seeking for a final solution so far as this is concerned. And therefore, but it is not possible at all that I will be happy at all the times, in all places, in all situations, unless the happiness is a nature of oneself. I give you example, like you know, the sugar crystal. Puja Swami is an example only. Sugar crystal wants to be sweet here and anywhere. Sugar crystal wants to be sweet now and later. Sugar crystal wants to be happy in this situation. I mean, along with the salt or along with the chili or what, sugar crystal wants to be sweet all the time. Then I have to say to sugar crystal, well, there is only one solution. If you want to be sweet at any place, at any time, now and then, later also, in this place and that other place also, and in varieties of the situations, you want to be sweet all the time. The only thing is that sweetness is your nature. Then only you can. Otherwise, once you acquire sweetness, that will go away also. But your heart is basically seeking sweetness under all circumstances, at any place and any time, and under all situations. Then it is not an acquired thing. It's not an acquired thing. It must be your own nature. It must be your own nature. Then how can I don't know that I am sweet? Well, that is where Vedanta comes in. That is where Vedanta comes in. And therefore, this is a situation. So my experience, and so happiness must be my nature, and it is not a situational. Any situational happiness I'm not comfortable with. I become happy, but I want to be that. That is my height, which I want to reach all the time. That's how any moment of any experience of a joy, well, definitely you want that experience again and again. That shows that you are seeking happiness all the time. Okay. This Atma is of you have brought, ultimately we know. Atma is a nature of happiness. That's okay, but it doesn't appeal me actually. My experience reveals that perhaps I am a source of happiness. Okay? Yeah. Experience reveals. You are not dissatisfied all the time, even though your desired ends are they have come. Still, you find yourself certain moments here and there in a waking state where you find yourself fulfilled, satisfied, happy person. Is it not so? At least let's say the other way. When you are happy, at least you don't have any complaint regarding yourself. That much is correct. If you have some complaint regarding yourself, if you have some dissatisfaction regarding yourself, you can't be a happy person. Therefore, if intrinsically I am a dissatisfied person and I have to acquire happiness through varieties of the actions as a result, well, then in that case, in my life, there should not be a single moment of satisfaction, because I'm basically intrinsically, by nature only, I'm dissatisfied. Therefore, there should not be any moment of satisfaction or happiness in my life. But that is not so. Even I am doing certain activity and I'm trying to establish my business. And they say 1,000 days you have to eat your own food, etc. They say, I mean, the business definitely takes time to get established, 3 years or something. They always say like that. Anyway, so you have not acquired, you have not gained your desired end called money. Then for 3 years, at least you should not be a happy person at all. But still, you find yourself several moments, even in a waking state. I'm not touching this deep sleep state at all, where you totally become free from the sense of dissatisfaction. Well, I'm not touching. Sometimes people complain, they always bring deep sleep state. Forget about that. Let's forget. But there are so many moments when you see a child, and a child is, lying on the back, basically on the floor, and it starts laughing, seeing you. And you start laughing. No, not a single desire has been fulfilled. You are constantly worrying that how should I fulfill my desires? Totally dissatisfied. But you see a child. He is happy. You see that and you become happy. You see a beautiful sunrise in the morning. You have just gone out and for a walk and you become happy. And you come out of your room in the night and you see a beautiful, it's a full moon. Beautiful moonlight is there. Sometimes in the spring, etc., while you see beautiful flowers, or a tree totally covered with these flowers, etc., you just become happy. And in that moment of happiness, are you a dissatisfied person, or are you a person who has accepted yourself as a total acceptance is there as a satisfied person? And if by nature you are dissatisfied, there is no scope that you find even a moment of satisfaction or a joy or happiness in your life. No way. If you are, by nature, you are dissatisfied. So our experience also reveals that perhaps I may be a source of satisfaction or happiness, perhaps. So, and then, well, definitely, so if I'm basically incomplete person, this dissatisfied person, then I cannot feel satisfaction occasionally also. So our experience really give rise to some understanding, leading to this viveka. And also, this mumukshutvam also means the desire for freedom from this seeking itself, basically. Seeking happiness, seeking security, seeking peace in the objects. No object is called happiness. Otherwise, let's make a beeline towards that object. You see in the morning, people are running on the opposite direction. In opposite, why are they running? They have found one or some object of happiness there in a western direction, and then someone is going to the eastern direction. Where is the happiness? What is that object which you can call it as a happiness? There is an object called computer. There's an object called a wire, an object called a lamp, an object called a microphone, an object called a cell phone. What is the object called happiness? In fact, what you call it as this object of happiness or source of happiness is a source of unhappiness for other. That's how garage sale takes place. Garage sale is a beautiful phenomenon where one becomes happy by giving up and other is happy by taking. So that shows one object. Suppose this is a person. Let's say, this is by the way, this is let's say he's a man. Now this woman, actually he's a married person. Think that this woman wants to marry him, but he's already married, and this person basically wants to get rid of the other woman. Could you follow what I'm saying? And therefore, or the other woman wants to get a divorce with this person. This woman wants to marry with him. This woman wants to get rid of him. Tell me whether this is an object of this person is an object of happiness or object of unhappiness. In a world, which time can you call it as a happiness? Every day at 5 o'clock in the morning, Swamiji, I really become so happy. Don't say that. Don't say that. Which place can you call it happiness? Swamiji, come to our beach. I will tell you. In California, you come and I will show you the beach. Going to the same beach, person starts crying. He has lost his wife before a few days here itself on that beach. In fact, wherever he sees the sand, even in a dry bed of a river, he becomes which time, which place, which object is called happiness? Swami, it's not an object called happiness. It's a characteristic of an object. Do you think that this has a characteristic called green color or yellow color? Like that, any object has a characteristic called happiness? The same object, if it is a characteristic, then everyone will call it as everyone call this as a green clip or a yellow clip, whatever. Pick up any object and let's say that it has a characteristic of happiness. Then everyone should tell, yes, whenever I come in contact with, I become happy. Whenever you see this clip, you say, well, it is yellow. Everyone will say, unless the person has some difficulty in eyes, right? A normal person with a normal eyesight will say that. Can you call it one object in the world where by coming in contact with that object, everyone says, yeah, that's a source of happiness. No object, no characteristic of object, no time, no place. World is covered. World is covered. What is left? World is not a source of happiness, which you and me are running around to gain every day. Karmachitan lokan pariksha. I've been examined. You examine our pursuits called arthakama, etc. I was saying for security, you can say. I have told just for happiness. You can even say for security also. For peace also you can say. You can say for PHS. Okay, peace, security, and happiness. No object, no characteristic object, no time, no place. Whole world is covered. Now, okay. Then if object is not a source of peace, security, and happiness, then I should never gain peace. Then I should never gain a sense of security. It should never gain even a joy, also moment of joy. But you experience. There must be a source. If object is not the source, what is the source? In world, there are two things. One is subject, other is object. Therefore, ultimately, this is a little analysis further. Well, Shastra says Atma is a source of happiness. My experience proves. And further, if I do little inference, then I find, yes, this seems to be true. Seems to be true. Because we will not agree immediately for everything. So one is a seeker helplessly. And so one is not a seeker to remain as a seeker always. One is seeking basically always. One is seeking because one cannot but seek. I cannot but seek happiness. I cannot but seek security. I'm very genuine in my desire for all the three: peace, security, and happiness, because that's how I am born. That's how every human being is born. And so, in fact, human life is designed to gain that. That's how it becomes Param Purushartha. So you are born with that desire. Unless you satisfy that desire, you have not achieved your goal. But the understanding is somewhere it is wrong. That all these three, the sources are somewhere else outside in the world. And such Brahmana, Sattvika person, basically, one who is having a little discriminative capacity, he understands that, yes, what I want in my life, well, is this moksha, basically. And but I'm searching that moksha, freedom. I will talk about to you tomorrow morning. So basically searching somewhere else. Well, so then he turns his back. He turns his back from these material pursuits. That's called dispassion. It's not disenchantment. It's a dispassion born of this analysis. Well, born of a viveka. What is nityam? What is anityam? My heart is seeking something permanent, and what I'm running after is something impermanent, which gives a moment of joy or a moment of security. When you gain some money, suddenly you feel you are so secure, but then the same insecurity prevails upon you. Therefore, momentarily it gives me, but it is really, my heart is seeking something permanent solution for all the three, basically. And so the Purushartha is somewhere else. Anyway, so one wants freedom from basically seeking itself. There is seeking on the part of this jiva, but it is at a wrong place. And therefore, and one should not say that I am seeking Swamiji because well, that is the only place it is available. And we should not say that. It's like, one woman lost her ring basically and was searching in the street. And our acharyas used to tell this example. And then somebody wanted to help that woman. So said, what are you searching for? Well, it says, I lost my ring. Oh, where did you lose? Well, I lost in my house somewhere. Oh, then why are you searching here outside the house? Oh, my house is all dark, and here there is a light. So, well, that's not a correct thing. Our situation is like this woman. So one has to search in the place where it is lost, and one has to search where there is a sense of dissatisfaction, or where satisfaction is sought. Satisfaction is not an object of experience. I have already told you regarding happiness. So that is the same thing. It's not an object of experience. It is just being oneself. Either one is satisfied or dissatisfied. Satisfaction or happiness centered on I, not on object. It's always centered on subject. Even as dissatisfaction also. Well, but then dissatisfaction is something which I want to get rid of. And satisfaction. If I find myself a satisfied being, I'm not in a hurry to get rid of satisfaction. That shows that's my nature. Once I attain my nature, definitely, I don't want to get rid of. What is not my nature, I definitely want to get rid of. And therefore, when a dissatisfaction centered on self arises, or it is there in fact, it is like a Shruti. Swamiji used to say that. It is all the time it is there, and I want to get rid of it. That is why in order for that, I mean, for that purpose only, I am doing a lot in the world here, right? I'm doing a lot of actions and trying to get rid of this dissatisfaction. But so the very search itself confirms this notion about the subject that I am dissatisfied. And first, such a notion, well, is accepted as a reality, and then one seeks satisfaction outside in the world. And so suppose one does an action, well, basically stemming from this false perception or problem, well, that only confirms the existence of a false problem. And so then only confirms the existence of false problem, and then problem begins to, develop further roots also. Anyway, so basically, I am satisfied, or I am having satisfaction, and I am dissatisfied. Well, one notion I want to get rid of, and that is dissatisfaction. Therefore, that is not my nature. What is not my nature, I am not comfortable with. What is my nature, I am comfortable with. And so whenever I am satisfied, people also know. When I am having some satisfaction or happiness, nobody consoles me. Nobody consoles me. Well, out of all the people, why you are having happiness? Well, I really, nobody says that. Nobody says. And well, nobody congratulates when you are dissatisfied. So that proves basically this is one part of the thing we have seen, part of the mantra. Parikshalokan karmachitan brahmanaha nirvedam. Nirvedam means dispassion. Ayat, he gained this dispassion for the worldly pursuits because that was a misplaced search. What I was searching, what my heart is really searching, is not there. It's like that woman who is searching ring outside, which she should not search. Where it has been lost, it has to be searched. Anyway, we'll see further tomorrow. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. So tomorrow we have class at 10 o'clock, right? Sade? So, yeah. Okay. So 10 to 11 tomorrow morning.
Yeah, 10. Yeah.
Okay. Oh.